Hey, everybody, welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe, Mary Kay, Cabot, a Hey Mary Kay edition of the podcast to kick off draft week. Finally, a few days from now, Mary Kay, the Browns will go on the clock at number 2 overall, unless something crazy happens between now and then. And they could potentially have a new quarterback. They will probably have a new wide receiver / cornerback when they do finally make that pick. But a lot will happen here towards the end of the week. So our final Hey Mary Kay edition of the podcast, of course, all of these questions from our Football Insider subscribers, cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page to get involved with that. So obviously we've talked a lot about who they could take, what they could take, but I thought this was just a good way to sort of frame the week and the weekend ahead from Mike Parker in Chester, Maryland. Hey Mary Kay, if the Browns nail their top 2 draft picks, do you think they could have a transformative year like the Commanders did last season? For example, Travis Hunter with pick 2 and Milroe or Dart with the 33rd pick.
Well, I do think that they can have a transformational season with their picks. I'm just not entirely certain that their quarterback that they take is going to be the one to do the transforming. Because if they wait until later in the first round or in the second round or even the third round to take their quarterback, I'm not sure that he's going to come in and start right away the way that Jaden Daniels did for the Washington Commanders. Now, if it is Jalen Milroe, and you and I have, been touting that, if they do something like that, then I do think that they should find a role for him and give him some things to do. And maybe he is ready to start midway through the season or something like that. But because they probably are not now drafting Shedeur Sanders at number 2 overall, I can't honestly say that I think that their first 2 picks are going to be the reason why they are transformative. I think Travis Hunter can be part of a transformation, and whoever starts at quarterback can be part of that. I'm just not entirely certain that the second round pick will necessarily be the one to get them over the hump. Now, having said that, if they come back with a pass rusher there, or at number 33 overall, or a running back that comes in and rushes for 1,200 yards and catches 5 touchdown passes or something like that, then that can certainly be part of an explosive offensive transformation. And that's what they really need. They averaged, of course, as we know, a league low 15.2 points per game last year. That has to change. They have to stop turning the ball over. So yes, I do think that this draft can be transformational. I'm just not sure if it will be in the way that people might expect it to be.
Yeah, I don't know that it necessarily becomes like, the Commanders who made it to the NFC Championship game. And let's be honest, the AFC is a more difficult conference than the NFC. That helped them too. But obviously that's a franchise that has high expectations now. But I do think, we should be looking at this as, if this thing is going to turn into something in the next 2 to 3 years, it has to start with this draft. So, because you have 5 picks in the top 104, 4 picks on the first 2 days. They're really valuable picks. The number 2 overall pick, the 33rd pick. This is a vital draft. And I think even if they don't come out of here with their quarterback of the future, which I'm not sure that they're going to, you can still use this draft to kind of put all the pieces in place so that when you're ready to kind of find that guy of the future, if it's not somebody you draft here, if you go into next year, whether it's a free agent or a draft pick, whatever next year looks like, you can really put the pieces in place, because this team just really needs more young talent, more playmaking ability, more guys like Travis Hunter, more guys like, whoever they might pick elsewhere, just some more dynamic young playmaking, because this roster's gotten a little old and they're kind of coming out of this go win the Super Bowl right now mode. And that's sort of what the roster looks like. So they kind of have to refresh things, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
They really do. And that's why if you do take Travis Hunter, you are not just refreshing your offense, but you're also refreshing your defense in one fell swoop. And as we know, they need to score more touchdown passes and they need to grab more takeaways. And he can help in both of those regards. Now, your quarterback that comes in is going to do the other component of this, and that's not turn the ball over, not throw interceptions. Because if they can get that whole thing turned around, that's what's going to be the biggest change in this football team next year, is winning the turnover battle week after week after week. It is so vitally important. So in addition to everything else that you do, down for down, player for player, that just has to be a big part of it. I think anybody that you add on either side of the ball, that you have to be very mindful of that turnover differential. And I think that's one of the reasons why they really like Kenny Pickett, and why they talk Kenny Pickett up so much, is because he's really not known for turning the ball over. He's a good game manager. And I think that they believe that he will be an even better game manager with some upside potential for some bigger plays here in Cleveland, when he has some stability and some weapons around him and a good offensive line. But I think when you look at even the defensive guys that you add, you've got to try to find guys that can be very aggressive and that can take that ball away. And they really haven't done anything yet that makes you think, oh, yes, I see that coming. But I do think that Travis Hunter would be a big part of that for them on that side of the ball. And now that I think they have to continue to push the envelope in that way as they make their picks this coming weekend.
Yeah, it feels like so much of this offseason, outside of signing Myles Garrett to a record-breaking deal, of course, which is a pretty big move. But it seems like most of the moves this offseason have pointed towards this draft. And, two things. One, kind of finding out about some young guys on the roster, like a Cedric Tillman, some of these young edge rushers that got some time last year. And then also, what can you add in this draft that can, certainly you want some guys that can make an impact right away. But again, add guys that are going to be part of your long-term future, because there aren't enough of those guys in your building right now.
No, there really aren't. And as you mentioned, the roster did get a little bit older. It did get a little stale. I mean, last year I never got around to writing this story, but I was doing a dad story where there were a lot of 33-year-old guys with 4 kids on this roster. And that's not necessarily going to get you to the promised land. And so I think they do need to get younger, faster, more aggressive. And so I think that you will see those kinds of things as they move forward here. But as we get so close to the draft, I still do think right now in this moment that it probably is going to be Travis Hunter at number 2. I haven't wavered from that for, the past couple of weeks, when it became apparent that they were pivoting away from Shedeur Sanders. I haven't come back to the notion that maybe they will surprise us all and go with Shedeur at number 2 overall. If that happens at this point, I would be surprised. I think you probably would be surprised too. It really just seems like right? I mean, it just seems like the vibe is really away from doing that and then finding your quarterback somewhere else. And that's the X factor here, is that we don't really know what the somewhere else and who that someone else is going to be. But I think that that's probably the biggest question mark for the Browns in this draft.
So let's talk a little more Travis Hunter before we get into some of the quarterback options. And this question comes from Christian, Nicholas, and Hudson. Hey, Mary Kay, if the Browns draft Travis Hunter, will they seek to play him at only one position to make it easier to re-sign or franchise him when the time comes if he plays well? I do think there's a lot of interesting contract implications down the road with Travis Hunter, including getting paid like a wide receiver versus getting paid like a cornerback. But I guess just more generally speaking, have you gotten an indication of how the Browns really do want to use Travis Hunter?
Yeah, I think I have a pretty good handle on that. It really does seem like they will go full-time wide receiver and then give him as much cornerback as they can. That's what it seems like. That's what Andrew Berry pretty much said when we talked to him at the pre-draft press conference last week. I think it's still wide receiver first, cornerback second. And that probably means that he's not going to be on the field every single down at cornerback. Maybe it means that, he comes in against 3 wides. We would have to see how that plays out. But I think there probably is a way to do it. And if you're going to take Travis Hunter, if you're going to take this unicorn, then you have to be prepared to let him be himself, because he's not going to be happy doing anything less than a lot of snaps on offense and a lot of snaps on defense. If you're not prepared to do that, then leave this unicorn alone.
And I think too they have to be prepared to pivot even. Like let's say they get him into their building and they get him out on the field in the summer and they realize like, whoa, this guy could be a shutdown corner or, whatever it is. And obviously they've done a lot of work on him already and have watched a bunch of tape on him. So they probably have a good idea about what he is on both sides of the ball. But just if for some reason they look at it and they're like, hey, this guy, if we play him full time at corner, he's going to do this. He's going to intercept 6-7 passes a year, and then we can use him part time at receiver. I think they have to be willing to pivot too if they kind of get into this thing and they kind of say, you know what, we actually think him at corner full time makes our defense better, and we can still find a role on offense for him.
Yeah, I don't know. I do think, and you're right, they have to be ready to pivot. But it does seem to me that they talk of his ball skills so much that they're going to really want to use him and focus with him on that side of the ball, on the offensive side of the ball, and make sure he is helping them become the explosive offense that they need him to be. And when you look around the NFL, one of the biggest things that those winning teams have is that quarterback receiver combo where the guy is catching 13 touchdown passes and 14 touchdown passes and 15 and so on. And I think that's what they're looking for. And I think that's what they need. Now, of course, they have Jerry Jeudy, and they don't necessarily need Travis to catch double-digit touchdown passes, although I think there's probably a good chance that he can do that. They might divide that up a little bit more between those two guys. But I still think that they will lean more towards the offensive side of the ball with as many defensive snaps as they can possibly carve out for him.
Yeah, and obviously too, as we've seen more wide receivers get paid, those young receivers on rookie deals are becoming more and more valuable, kind of like edge rushers and quarterbacks, to different degrees. But receivers now, you get a receiver at number 2, and you don't have to pay him huge money for 3-4 years. That becomes really, really valuable to have a receiver on a rookie contract. So, yeah, I it's interesting. I kind of can't wait to see what this looks like at the NFL level, to see if he can kind of live up to what he wants to do. And then, of course, there's the question of who's throwing him the football. So that brings us to Scott Mandel in Los Angeles. Hey, Mary Kay. It's pretty obvious that if the Browns are going to move back into the first round, they'd have to jump the Steelers, who will almost for sure take a quarterback, although I'm seeing some reporting that might not necessarily be the case. But what do you think it will cost them to make that move?
That's a great question. I don't know what it would cost them, but I'm working on a column today, and I know you wrote about Jalen Milroe last week too. But I'm working on the fact that I think that they should aggressively try to acquire Jalen Milroe, even if they have to give up some decent draft capital to do it. I just think that that's a player that they should be going after for a lot of the reasons that we've talked about before, that you just don't find traits like this. You don't find speed like this coupled with arm strength like that. And then you factor in great personality, leadership skills, great work ethic, and all of those other things that it would take to have him actually develop as that passer. So I'm all in on doing whatever it takes to move up, to jump up there and grab a Jalen Milroe. Now, what I wouldn't do is give up a first round pick next year. Not doing that. But a nice package. I don't necessarily know exactly what that would be. Maybe it's a second round pick next year or something. And if you hope to get back to winning, that's not going to be the 33rd overall pick next year either. I mean, if you can go out and win some football games this year, you hope to be drafting somewhere in the middle of the pack. So I would give up something decent to move up. And again, I do think that you would probably have to go higher than 21, where the Steelers are sitting, to try to get up for a Jalen Milroe. Because if you don't do that, then somebody's going to grab him in the 20s, is what I think. I really do believe that he will be gone by the 20s. people, I think teams will have learned from what happened in 2018 with Lamar Jackson, where no one knew what to make of Lamar Jackson. And he tumbled all the way to number 32 in the first round. Well, now there's a good comp for Lamar Jackson. And of course, it's Jalen Milroe. So I do think that someone's going to be really smart and they're going to figure out exactly how to get this guy on their team. And if it were me, if I were the Cleveland Browns, I would be making sure that it's them. Because could you imagine having an athlete like a Travis Hunter adding to both sides of the football, and then you add a Jalen Milroe at quarterback? And again, in the beginning, if he's not ready to be your quarterback, he can certainly play a role for you and do a bunch of different things. We saw how Taysom Hill almost single-handedly beat the Browns. So there are a number of things that he can do for you right away. What you're talking about here is one of the absolute best athletes in this draft. That kind of speed, 4.37, that kind of an arm. My goodness, the arm is huge. So I would be doing whatever it takes. And again, he's not a perfect prospect right now. And we don't see him going very high in the draft at all. I mean, no one has him going in the top 10, but maybe that'll prove to be a mistake. Maybe it won't. Again, he's a little bit hard to figure and to peg for the NFL, but the Browns have the inside track on him with Tommy Rees, their offensive coordinator, who of course worked with him at Alabama. So they know what he's all about. They have a head start on Jalen Milroe. And I just think that they should commit resources. They should do whatever they have to do and try to go there, up there and grab him, maybe even in the teens.
So I obviously have come around on Jalen Milroe, but I'm still a little wary about giving up a lot to move up to get him, and kind of giving up real draft capital to move up and get him. And I still wonder where he's actually going to end up going in this draft, because with a lot of these quarterbacks, I mean, I could see two scenarios. I could see just a run on quarterbacks, but then I could also see, I think sometimes it can be hard for some of these GMs and coaches to actually turn in that card for a guy and state, like, if you're the Saints, do you want to stake your career to Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe in the first round? Or would you rather just sort of see what happens and get to the second round and then maybe wait till next year? So I'm really curious to see, how some of these teams approach it, because obviously, even if Shedeur Sanders starts to fall, right? Like, if you're a GM, do you want to turn in that card for Shedeur Sanders in the first round if you don't completely believe in that guy? Now, a guy like Mike Tomlin has tons of job security, right? So he could, he's someone who could do that. A Sean McVay with the Rams, right? Like, they're not going to fire Sean McVay if they reach for a quarterback in the first round. So I'm really curious to see how this all plays out with these quarterbacks, just because we could be sitting there Thursday and there could be a run on quarterbacks, or we could be sitting there Thursday and we could be saying, nobody's taking these guys. Like, Cam Ward goes one, maybe Shedeur Sanders goes early, and then it's kind of like nobody's actually going after these guys. And that'll make Thursday night very interesting for the Browns, because again, I would consider a small move up. I mean, I don't know. I don't remember what the Ravens gave up, but they traded up to get back into the first round for Lamar. So I don't know what they gave up off the top of my head. Obviously, if you're giving up 33 to move into the first round and take Jalen, that's fine, because then you're basically saying you'd have taken him at 33 anyway. And then I don't know. You've got a bunch of mid-round draft picks. You've got a bunch of things you could toss in there to move up a few spots. But I actually would not go like all out to get Jalen Milroe. I would only do it if it fell a certain way. It sounds like you would be more aggressive, though.
Yes, I would be. I would be more aggressive. And that's kind of the way that I'm writing my column. Now, do I think the Browns will actually do that? I don't really think they'll do it. It just doesn't sound like their style or the way they usually operate. But in my mind, when you have a prospect like this that is almost like no other, then I think it's worth it. He would be the fastest quarterback in the draft, and yet he's got this cannon arm to go along with it. He is the wave of the future, the dual threat quarterback. He would take some seasoning. I do understand that. but the Browns have time on their side. Andrew Berry has already told us we're not forcing a quarterback. Jimmy Haslam has already said we're not forcing a quarterback. So if they have to wait until next year for him to get on the field, so be it. But I don't think you can let a guy like this pass you by when you really need to get with the quarterback program of what's going on in the NFL. If you can acquire the best dual threat quarterback in this class, it's a chance worth taking. Who cares if you have to give up a second round pick next year, or I don't even know what else it would take. But
Well, just for reference, I did look this up, just so we have it. So the
mhm,
Ravens in 2018 traded with Philadelphia, and they gave up. Hold on, I got to close this little window here. They gave up their second round pick, which was 52, a fourth round selection, which was 125, and then they gave up a second rounder in 2019. So
mhm.
so basically, the package you're
Yes.
proposing.
Yes, exactly. I didn't even I didn't even know that, but that's exactly what I was thinking.
You and Eric DeCosta on the same page.
Exactly. So yes, you give up your second rounder next year. Your second rounder, of course, 33. You're basically moving up, and then another decent pick. And whether that's your second, third rounder this year, or whatever you would have to do, depending on how high you're going. They obviously weren't going up super high because Lamar went number 32, but the Browns would probably have to go up higher to get Jalen, but they have 10 picks. And when you look at some of the draft picks, not just by the Cleveland Browns over the last 5 years, but across the league over the last 5 years, take a chance. Use some of those picks on something that could prove to be really good for you. If you get we've talked about this so often. If you get your franchise quarterback out of the deal, who cares if you gave up next year's second round pick? I mean, half the time those guys, and that's, I'm speaking literally there, half the time those guys don't hit anyways. So why not throw some resources uh, to have an opportunity to land what I think is almost another unicorn in his own right in this draft? Because to have a quarterback who can run like that and throw the ball like that, I think there's something really special about that. And let me take us all back to 2018. And I did extensive work on Josh Allen that year. His quarterbacks coach in the pre-draft process was Jordan Palmer, the same quarterbacks coach for Jalen Milroe. And nobody wanted to believe Jordan Palmer that he was able to help turn Josh Allen into an accurate quarterback when he was seemingly inaccurate in college, if you looked at the statistics and the numbers and the completion percentage and those kinds of things. But I talked to Jordan a fair amount in 2018 about whether or not Josh Allen could become an accurate quarterback. And he said at that time, he already has. He already has. And people missed it. So everybody missed it. And I think the same thing could be happening with Jalen Milroe, that he is developing very quickly as a passer. Once you start to get some different eyes on him and some different coaching on him, things can happen quickly if you have the right work ethic. And I think he does have the right work ethic. So I'm going for it here. Again, me saying this does not mean the Browns will do this. This is just something that I would personally do. And when I that's what I said in 2018, 100% that I would take Josh Allen there because I firmly believed at that point that he was becoming and could become an accurate quarterback. And that was the only question mark about it. And I think the question mark about Jalen Milroe is, can he become an elite passer? Well, we've watched it happen already with Lamar Jackson over the years. Every single year you look out there and watch Lamar Jackson unleash that football, it looks better and better every year. I think the same thing can happen with Jalen Milroe. I wouldn't pass up a unique talent like this.
And let's not forget the Ravens passed on Lamar too. They
Mm-hmm.
took like some tight end or something before they drafted Lamar Jackson. So again, I'm more in the camp of see if he kind of falls a little closer to 33. And I don't know. I mean, I know he's going to be in Green Bay for the draft, which is interesting. He's going to be in that green room, so that's a very interesting development. But I'm more in the camp of let him fall a little closer to 33, and then if he's sitting there, a couple picks left on Thursday night, it might be time to pounce. Or maybe he makes it out of the first round, and you can just take him at 33, which would be great. But we are on the same page that I think Milroe is worth taking a chance on, at least. So we
Well,
can go ahead.
let me ask you this, Dan. So you're getting into the 20s. There's a good chance the Steelers are going to grab him, maybe at 21 if you don't do something about it there, or that somebody else might. And so you're the Browns, and you're deciding that you're not going to be that aggressive because you don't want to give up anything too much for him. So what then happens if, first of all, who do you end up with at quarterback this year? Maybe not your quarterback of the future, but what happens then if you have to face Lamar Jackson 4 times a year because Jalen Milroe is the next Lamar Jackson? So all of a sudden the Steelers have him, have Milroe, and the Ravens have Lamar, and you find yourself wondering just what hit you again.
So yeah, I understand that argument, and then I look really stupid when all is said and done. And this is where at like the Browns have to whatever they decide to do, whether they get aggressive and move up to get Jalen Milroe, or whether they decide that they're just going to let it play out. That's when they have to trust their evaluation of him, right? Like they have to trust that what they know about Jalen Milroe and that having Tommy Reese in the building and everything he's told them, like they have to either trust that, yes, we believe deep down in our core that we're getting the next, Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson or someone like that. So we're going to trade up to get him, or we're okay letting a Pittsburgh have him, or we're okay letting someone else have him because our evaluation of him is that he's not going to be that guy. And there's risk in both of those things. And for me, like I said, I've come around on Jalen Milroe. I'm still not completely sold that he's going to turn into that guy in the NFL. But I can also see how it's going to happen. So that's what the Browns have to do. They just have to trust whatever they think of Jalen Milroe. They have to trust that, and they can't overreact if that scenario is playing out where he's going to end up in Pittsburgh.
I just think it's worth the risk these days to take a chance on a quarterback and see if he can become something, even if you are not sure. I really do think that that's what you have to do. And I would much rather take that chance and even throw some resources at it and fail than blow it, completely blow it. And who knows if they would be able to pull it off. I'm not saying that they would be able to turn him into the next Lamar Jackson. I don't know if he can become the next Lamar Jackson. But if he can, then you have just set yourself up for the next decade. If he can't, then you go back to the drawing board again, which who else are you going to get this year where you're probably not going to have to go back to the drawing board again anyways? So I just feel like I think Tommy Reese knows him well enough. They have the inside track, the inside intel on this guy, and that he can pick up where he left off with Jalen Milroe. But if you can go out there and run around and have an arm like that and make good decisions and then develop as a passer, which I believe he will do, then I think it's just at least a risk worth taking, and I would be taking it.
And we have seen it as the NFL has modernized. We have seen like an imperfect passer can excel if he can do a bunch of other things. And Lamar Jackson is obviously the example we all hold up of that. I think Lamar Jackson is probably on his way to the Hall of Fame. I mean, I think that's a really high bar. But, we point to Lamar Jackson because he was not a perfect passer when he first got to the NFL. And there's times when he's still not a perfect passer. And he's a completely different runner than Jalen Milroe. But, Jalen Hurts is kind of the same way. Like, he is certainly not this perfect, like, Peyton Manning type of passer. But Philadelphia's figured out how to maximize him and use him. And they just won a Super Bowl with him. Like, this idea that you have to have this perfect like 5-tool player at quarterback to win, I think has kind of gone out the window now. You can have an imperfect player, but if there's things that he does really well and you can figure out how to maximize them and then improve those other tools, you can figure out a way to win. So that's your argument for Milroe right there.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes too much sense to me to toss your hat into this ring and see what you can do with it. I mean, you would have one of the most athletic quarterbacks in the NFL. And they're not all going out there and succeeding right away. We've seen other athletic quarterbacks that haven't come into the league and been successful right away and might never be. But I think it's worth taking the chance. If it doesn't work out, that's okay. Don't live in your fears. Do not live in your fears. Take the chance and see where it leads you.
Okay, I got to look this up because I forgot to write this guy's name down. But he actually made a draft prediction, and this goes right along with what we were just talking about. It's Rick LaPlaglia. I think I'm saying his name right. He's been a long time subscriber, so I should know how to say it. Sorry, Rick. Clifton Springs, New York. So he wrote down on a piece of paper and put it in his wallet back on January 29th. His draft prediction was number 2, Travis Hunter, and number 33, Jalen Milroe. So the question he has here is, hey, Mary Kay, how close do you think this will be to reality?
It could happen. It could absolutely happen that way. I saw even one mock draft today. Jonathan Jones of CBS Sports, he has only one quarterback going in the first round in Cam Ward. Now, I would actually be shocked if it happens that way because teams are going to take a chance on some of these guys, even if they're overdrafting them. We know that they get overdrafted. But I think that more than one will go in the first round. So, yes, Jalen Milroe might be right there for the Browns at 33, and they might not have to move up. But what if a team knows exactly what the Cleveland Browns are going to do at 33, and they jump right in there at number 32 and swipe him? What good is that going to do them? So I think it's close. I think it could be close, that prediction. But I would not take that risk of thinking that he is still going to be there at number 33. And once again, having said all of this, there's a darn good chance that the Browns are not thinking along these lines at all. I actually kind of doubt that it's going to go this way. But this is what I would do. And I think it makes so much sense. Again, they've done a really good job of making sure that everybody's confused about what they're going to do. But I still think that this would probably be a little bit of a long shot for them because I do think that you would have to move up somewhere fairly high to get Jalen Milroe, somewhere in the 20s, at least ahead of 21. And I don't know if they're prepared to do something like that.
Okay, we had a few people bring up this position, and so let's address it. Steve Boozin in Alexandria, Virginia. Hey, Mary Kay, does the final contract year status of the projected offensive line starters make it a priority position in this draft, or have some offseason signings mitigated those concerns? And just on top of that, we had a bunch of questions. Mike De Niro from Youngstown, Dave and Stowe both wanted to ask about offensive linemen and the tackle position. Do the Browns need to make sure that they're planning for the future across that offensive line?
Well, I think so. And of course, we know that Andrew Berry describes himself and the Cleveland Browns as offensive line snobs. And if they see an offensive lineman anywhere in this draft that gives them good value, they will pounce on that player. And yes, I think they do need to continue to add to their tackle room. No one knows how DeJuan Jones is going to come back from his current injury or some of his other injuries and surgeries, and if he's going to be able to stay healthy. That's a humongous question mark for the Cleveland Browns. And then Jack Conklin is also getting up there a little bit, and nobody knows exactly how long he's going to be playing for the Cleveland Browns. So you definitely have to be planning for the future. And they did sign, they did sign a tackle in free agency, but absolutely 100%. If they find good value at offensive tackle, even guard, even center, they will not hesitate to add to the room.
Yeah, and like you said, those names you mentioned. So at tackles, you've got Jones and Conklin, and of course DeJuan's injury history. But Jack Conklin too has suffered some serious injuries as well. So when he's been on the field, he's been very good. He's headed for free agency. Joel Bitonio was considering retirement this season. Wyatt Teller is not getting any younger, and you're at a point where you'd have to extend him. So they do need to make sure that they're planning for the future. But the good news there is that doesn't mean you have to take a guy in the first round necessarily. You can find good offensive linemen late in the draft. You can find them as undrafted free agents, especially if you believe in your ability to develop them, which is part of why they made this change at offensive line coach after Bo Callahan left and it didn't work out with Andy Dickerson. You're hoping you can bring guys in and develop them.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that that's why we will see some defensive linemen and some offensive linemen coming onto the football team in this draft, even though they have added both of those things in free agency. I still think that you will see an influx of young talent in both of those areas. Especially, it does really seem like they could use some good defensive tackles to go along with Mike Hall and the other guys that are in there. So, they really pride themselves, just like the Philadelphia Eagles do, on building tough through those lines. If you continue to do that, then you should be able to remain competitive as long as your people stay healthy. It didn't work out that way for the Browns last year, but if you keep building those lines, then you're probably going to be ahead of the game.
Yeah, and let's not completely give up on a guy like Zach Zinter either. Obviously, he didn't look great last year, but an off season to continue developing and that strength and conditioning program and get him back out there. We'll see. You just kind of throw him in the mix and maybe he can work his way into the discussion too in the future. Okay, that will do it for this final edition of the Hey Mary Kay version of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast before the draft. Full week of pods coming your way, of course, full draft coverage coming your way. So just make sure you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Football Insiders, cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page. YouTube is Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. Instagram is Orange and Brown Talk, and Twitter/X is Orange Brown Talk. I see and I hear a bunch of kittens playing in the background. So yeah, check us out on YouTube. You'll get to see some kittens running in and out of Mary Kay's house there. For Mary Kay, I will talk to you later.
Sounds great.